What's up, people? How's it going? Hope you guys are having a good Friday afternoon so far. We're going to go ahead and push out the NCAA college football watch schedule here because we actually have kind of an interesting game later tonight, late afternoon, early evening, and I want to briefly touch on this because, like I say, sometimes a player that you weren't really thinking about before the season started, or even maybe midway through the season, becomes an interesting prospect as time goes by. And whenever I notice that happening, I definitely want to call attention to it. So there's going to be one game tonight that I'm going to recommend anybody who doesn't have anything better to do check out. And then we've got a full slate tomorrow. Pretty much nothing but double headers the whole day. So let's jump in. College football, who to watch, when to watch, where to watch. You guys know the drill. All right. Tonight, 5 p.m., ESPN2. We have East Carolina taking on the Cincinnati Bearcats. Not a super compelling or super high-profile game. But Cincinnati, there's one player on that team this year that I now want to draw attention to. It's Ivan Pace Jr. I've had multiple people mention him to me in my comments and stream chats lately. Very interesting player. And this strikes me as the kind of guy who could be like, not as good, but kind of like what Micah Parsons is doing right now in Dallas, where this guy is an inside linebacker. This guy plays on the interior for the Bearcats defense. But he's a dominant pass rush threat. So far this year, I think he has like, 7 or 8 sacks. A couple years ago, he actually had 6 sacks in one game. Now, it was against Akron, or Acon, or whatever they're called. But nevertheless, this is a guy who is among the league leaders in tackles, but he also racks up sacks. So you look at that and you go, he can play on the inside, he can play on the outside, he can rush the passer, he can play the run. A lot of stuff that Ivan Pace Jr. can do. As of right now, I'm seeing some day 2 hype around him. I don't think he can get into day 1, but he's fun. He's good, and I believe he will enter the draft this year because he's been around a while. He transferred to Cincinnati earlier this year. So I think he's now become a player that we as Seahawks fans should keep an eye on because we have a linebacker need, and you always need more pass rush anyway. So tonight, 5 p.m., ESPN2. Not a great game overall, but let's start taking a look at this Ivan Pace guy and see if he's a guy we want to maybe go after in March and April. Okay, now we move on to Saturday, tomorrow. We've got nothing but double headers, basically, the whole way down. So 9 a.m. starts early. Got 2 games that are not necessarily going to be competitive, but there's some stuff going on in both of them that is worth watching. Indiana takes on Ohio State. Ohio State's favored by like 40. But Ohio State, I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff there that's always worth watching no matter who they're playing. And frankly, last time Ohio State played, they didn't look great. I know there were extenuating circumstances, but they're definitely going to want to wash the taste of that last game out of their mouth. C.J. Stroud, Zach Harrison, Ruggles. It's a good team that has some very interesting Seahawk-type prospects, so that's on Fox. 9 a.m. on ABC, we have Notre Dame versus Navy. And me picking which game to go after here was actually kind of tough. Arkansas's playing, but I think I got to just get off the KJ Jefferson thing because he doesn't fit this offense at all. So I'm kind of off that. Kentucky plays, but they're on the SEC network, so I didn't want to throw them in. A couple other interesting games, but Notre Dame remains a very interesting team to me this year because they have my favorite center prospect, Jarrett Patterson. So knowing that we're probably going to need a center next year because Blythe is a free agent, and I believe Fuller is as well, I have to definitely prioritize the center position. In fact, you could argue that we should prioritize the center position over even something like quarterback now because of the way Geno Smith is playing. So, yeah, I'm going to recommend Notre Dame at 9 a.m. Keep an eye on that center dude. Navy, not going to do a great job providing competition for Notre Dame, but that's the opponent that they have in front of them. So, yeah, 9 a.m. ABC, Notre Dame taking on Navy. Okay, 12:30 now. We move to the afternoon here, and CBS has a very good game that has a lot of very interesting prospects for Seahawks fans. Alabama versus Ole Miss. And I don't need to sell you on all the players on Alabama at this point. You guys know Will Anderson, Bryce Young. They've got like three guys on that defensive line. They've got Cohen on the offensive line. They've got Reichard, the kicker. Lot of stuff going on Alabama. Probably some players that I haven't even really mentioned yet are going to be interesting for pro prospects. Maybe not necessarily to this team, but I think we all know that Alabama churns them out like crazy. Ole Miss, they're a very good team. There's probably an interesting prospect or two somewhere in there. I don't know them by name, admittedly. Excuse me. But Ole Miss is going to provide good competition for that Alabama team that is kind of reeling right now. So that's going to be a great game anyway, and Alabama's prospects make it a watch for sure. At the same time, however, we have at 12:30 p.m. on ESPN, Louisville versus Clemson. I'm off the DJU train. He's going to have to come back next year and play very well for me to be interested in him. I think he's a 2024 prospect now, not a 2023 one, unless you can get him in like a day 3, and then you can develop him maybe. But realistically, I'm off DJU, but I am very much on the players on that Clemson defense. Breeze, Simpson, Murphy, Davis. Great prospects on that defense. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. There's, I think, a very high chance that one of those Clemson defenders ends up a Seahawk this upcoming draft. Now, Louisville, I don't know if they're in a great position to make Clemson work, but Clemson didn't play well last week, that's for sure. So you could say they have a little bit of something to prove. So that's a good watch for sure. And that takes us to the later afternoon, early evening slate. We've got ESPN, 4 p.m., Georgia taking on Mississippi State. And Georgia, probably the best team in college football. They speak for themselves, right? Personally, of course, I'm a big fan of Jalen Carter. I like Cedric Van Pran, their center. Those are the two guys who I'm really targeting, but there are going to be other guys on that Georgia defense too. I mean, they're playing so good right now, you know they're going to be sending a lot of players to the NFL. I'm not a big fan of Stetson Bennett, but if you're talking about a late-round quarterback you could get that might be interesting to develop, he's got to be somewhere. I'm sure he'll get drafted at this rate, right? Like, I don't think he's a complete Ken Dorsey. I think he will probably get picked somewhere. And Mississippi State, I don't know how good they are as a team overall. I don't know if they can challenge Georgia. But Will Rogers, still a fun quarterback prospect. So yeah, Will Rogers, combine that with what Georgia has, makes this a very good watch for Seahawks fans at 4 p.m. Half hour later, 4:30 p.m., ABC, TCU takes on Texas. So TCU has that nickel corner who I really like. I think his name is Hodges Tomlinson. One of my favorite nickel corners in this draft. As of right now, somebody you could probably get in a later round. So that's appealing because as much as Kobe Bryant is trying his best out there, I don't know if that's a position that's suited to his skill set. And Trey Brown, while I think he can play nickel, I think we view him as an outside corner as well. Now, I understand that that's a lot of outside corners we got, but hey, good problem to have. But anyway, worth watching for that. And Texas, they don't have anybody in this upcoming draft I'm super high on, but there's some stuff on that team that could be interesting next year. So, I don't know, maybe you can do some preliminary scouting for that, but decent game. And then you get to the late slot, the late games with 7 p.m. ESPN, Stanford versus Utah. Not great, but Stanford does have McKee, quarterback who I'm passively interested in as maybe a day 3 pick. Not super high on him, but there's some stuff there to like. He impresses me with some of the stuff he does. Doesn't impress me with some of the other stuff, honestly. But sure, Utah has a nickel corner as well. Let me check his name, make sure I don't get that wrong. Phillips III. He's actually rocketing up draft boards, I've noticed lately. He is now becoming a guy who could be a day 2 pick. So if you're looking for a guy with a nickel corner pedigree, I know he had a game earlier this year where he had 3 interceptions, and he's starting to turn some heads. So yeah, I would say that Phillips over in Utah is a worthy watch, and combine that with McKee on Stanford, and there's enough to maybe convince you to tune in. especially if you're a Pac-12 fan or a fan of a Pac-12 team and you want to see how Utah does because that's so important. And at 7:30 p.m., half hour later on Fox, Arizona takes on UCLA. And like I've said over the past few weeks, UCLA, I mean, it's kind of nice being one of these Pac-12 teams that has one or two interesting prospects because there's so little competition when you're on TV, right? Like, your games are almost always going to be super late in the day. Alabama will have already played. Georgia will have already played. Ohio State already played. So a team like UCLA that I'm not super crazy about, nevertheless, does have Charbonnet, does have Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Two fairly interesting prospects. I don't know if the Seahawks personally have a lot of interest, but between those two guys, there's some real credibility there. So I would say give it a shot if you got nothing better going on Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. And yeah, that's your slate for this upcoming week of college football. It starts tonight. Pretty interesting, compelling game at 5 p.m. And then you've got nothing but double headers the whole Saturday. All right, I will see you guys later. Go Hawks. Couple more videos coming later today. But just wanted to quickly drop the watch schedule for college football. See you guys later.